Hallo, ich weiß, ich bin jetzt die letzte Person zwischen uns und Dinner, deswegen versuche ich das alles pünktlich zu halten und danke sehr, dass ich heute hier sein darf. Es ist mir echt große Ehre, meine Arbeit vorstellen zu dürfen. Meine Folien sind auf Englisch, deswegen wird mein Vortrag auch auf Englisch sein, aber danach die Fragen können in beiden Sprachen folgen. Das passt. Also, now let's switch. So I'm today presenting work on modeling electricity markets using multi-agent reinforcement learning. Thanks, Felix, for a perfect introduction to the topic. And we will get into there. We will see many interactions between the two topics, but I will go from a little bit different direction. So first, I would like to say what story I chose for my presentation when I was presenting in April during the defense of my PhD. And actually, 1 month before the defense of my PhD, I had a call. We got a call from some colleagues, and actually from 50 Hertz, and they wanted to meet with us to ask some questions about storage units and modeling them. And apparently they were worried about the storage units. And for this, let's first understand why was they so worried about them. Oops, sorry. So we saw that in Germany, a lot of storage capacity is being planned. A lot of applications are being submitted. Some are being approved. Some already being canceled because there is no more transmission capacity or no connection is possible. And this makes the transmission system operators nervous. So why is that? Here we see x-axis, this is our time, and d is our delivery. So now it's 5:45. Electricity is being delivered to us right now. And this electricity, let's assume we don't have over-the-counter trading, was sold yesterday on the day-ahead market. It was cleared, and now we are getting this electricity. So this is a delivery. This is a day-ahead market closure. So now what we have intraday market closure. So people were able to, up to half an hour ago, still trade electricity on the markets, submit bids, buy electricity, so balance themselves out. Next, what we have transmission system operators who are responsible for that our system stays stable. And their problem was that, unfortunately, we have redispatch processes. We have single market zone and we have redispatch processes. And for them, the problem was that the last redispatch measure, which is cost efficient and nice for them to have, so to say, is 6 hours before delivery. So I guess looking at this, you start to see where the problem for them rises. And it is exactly in that region. From the point when they can perform the last redispatch to the point of when this intraday market closes, they have no idea how the storage units would act on this intraday market. What would they do? How would they try to maximize their profits? And how would they change the dispatch in the system? And can this changed dispatch affect the stability of the system? So this is our uncertainty region. And the question is, okay, how can we investigate it? How can we get to answer this question? And so I would like to walk you through that call, through how I explain to them how I would approach this problem. So first, we need to model the behavior of storage units. And we have different approaches for that. We have optimization models. We all are familiar with them. I'm sure every one of us used once in a life already an optimization problem. Next, we have equilibrium models. Unfortunately, they are not that widely used because they're complex mathematically to formulate them mathematically and also to solve them, and also with different agents and so on. So we won't be going deeper into there, but if we could, this would be the models to go for. We would be using equilibrium models because they deliver us what is the market equilibrium, what everyone would be doing, and so on. And last, we have the agent-based models, what Felix also introduced before me. So now let's take a look into how would we model the storage units using optimization models and agent-based models, and how would this work out for us. So optimization models, what we have here is a bunch of power plants and some storage units, and we have one system cost minimization. We see for marginal cost and G for the dispatch of the unit. Already looking at this equation, we can see that there is no place for profit for the storage units. We have marginal costs And if we assume that storage units, they only buy and sell and the running costs are negligible, there is no place in this equation for them. So we can already say that under such optimization models, the profits of the storage units are neglected. And other things of optimization models is that they assume perfect foresight, they assume system optimal behavior, and most importantly for us, profitability is not a goal in these models. So would it realistically represent what the storages would be doing within those 5.5 hours to maximize the profits? I don't think so. So now we can get to the agent-based models. In the equation, not much changed, but now instead of C, which was a parameter, fixed value, we get B, which is bid price of the unit. So now we start to see that there is now a place to earn money. And in agent-based models, we have not only the system cost minimization, this lower optimization problem, but we also have the profit maximization problem, which each individual unit has. And in this profit maximization model, we can see that they're trying to maximize using the bid prices to maximize the profit, which is defined as market clearing price minus marginal cost and multiplied by the dispatch. If we assume again that storages have negligible marginal costs or running costs, we can see directly that here is exactly where the profits of the storage units can be reflected. And this makes these models better to use for our question. Also, we can model imperfect information, model individual behavior, because we can represent this profit maximization function with different things. We will see in a bit what kinds of strategies we can use for that. And most importantly, they maximize own profit. So this is exactly what we are looking for to answer that initial question. And let's move in this direction. So now the question arises. So in current form, it is an equilibrium model. We have two optimization problems, and if we solve it, if we can formulate it, it's an equilibrium model. Unfortunately, a little bit complex to formulate and to solve. So what people usually do, they substitute this optimization problem with something else, such as rule-based strategy or some optimization, but which optimizes based on forecast prices, like Felix showed, and so on. So let's assume we get to use some rule-based strategy. What does it mean? What is a rule-based strategy? Let's start with a single storage unit. It gets some demand forecast. Based on this demand forecast, it generates some price forecast. And next, this storage unit has a fixed set of bidding strategy. So it charges below, when the price forecast is below 0.9 times some epsilon, and it discharges when it's above 1.1. And in between, it does nothing. So what does it mean for us? Here is our merit order curve without the storage. And now let's say that the storage unit decides to discharge under this current situation. What does it mean? It submits the bid. It changes a little bit the merit order curve, but the price is still 40 euros per megawatt hour, so the profit still stands. Now, what happens if we apply the same rule-based strategy, but now we have two units? So now we have two storage units. They all get the same demand forecast. They all get the same price forecast, but they still follow the same rule-based strategy. So both of them decide to discharge. They submit two bids at the same time. Merit order changes, and now the market clearing price dropped from 40 to 30. This is also what Felix was showing, how to solve this problem. And I'll be showing a different approach to how to solve this problem. So we see this. What could be a good solution to this problem? If we could create individual strategies for each of the storage units. What does it mean? That given the same demand forecast and price forecast, so we fix this, they develop their own bidding strategies. So instead of using a single epsilon, now they have 1 and 2. So they have different coefficients. They act to different times. Now, in this case, the first storage unit still decides to discharge. But the second unit decides to do nothing, because it knows that if I act now, I will drop the price. I better wait when the price difference is higher, and then I submit my bid, and I want to drop the price that strongly. What does it mean? The bid is no longer on the market. The market clearing price is back at 40 euros per megawatt hour. So the problem solved. And now the only thing left for us is we need to figure out how we can create this individual adaptive bidding strategies. And this is where this paper comes into play, finding individual strategies for storage units in electricity markets using deep reinforcement learning. But until we can get to this, and this is a paper I suggested to our colleagues, like what they can follow and how they can solve that issue. But until we could get here, it was a long way during my PhD. And so let's take a look at the journey. So we started with the first research question, simply looking at, does it even work? How to do it? Because when I started it, we will see in the slides, it didn't work. So basically, we need to check, is it even feasible? Does it make sense to try to do it? Next, once we see, OK, it works, but I don't know how good it works. So we need a way to be able to evaluate the performance of this deep reinforcement learning. How good is it performing? It's working, yes, but how good is it coming to the optima? Afterwards, we can check, OK, can we use it to analyze system dynamics? Can we use it to analyze strategic behavior? What kind of benefits we can get from this technology? And finally, we can get to this question. So basically over here, we were looking at the system level, and now we can go a level deeper and look into the individual strategies. And this is what we will be focusing on today, this fourth research question. And there was a fifth research question, how to implement these methods practically and accessibly. And I'll say something short afterwards. So now let's proceed and focus on our research question 4. How is this achieved? Before we dive deeper, first a small introduction. What is reinforcement learning? In reinforcement learning, we have two parties. We have actor, in our case, power plant or storage unit, and we have our environment, which is the electricity market. They exchange observations. In our case, let's say forecasts. So our agent is expecting some price forecast and demand forecast on the market, and it submits bid volume and price, so action, to the market. It sends it bid. After the market clearing, the environment sends reward. In our case, it is revenue, and the agent can deduct its profit out of this revenue. So basically, this loop of exchange, so starting from some state, getting some observation, submitting some action, and getting some reward. This is how you can simply see reinforcement learning. And from this interaction, we try to learn a strategy which maximizes our reward. I hope this is clear so far, and we can proceed. So now what is multi-agent reinforcement learning? Basically, exactly same concept, but now we have multiple agents connected to the same environment. They still exchange the same observations, actions, and get rewards. Everything is simple so far, but there is one problem here, and that reinforcement learnings, for it to work, requires that future states depend only on current state and my own action. Only in this way can the agents learn. So if I submit bid at some point of 30, I will get accepted with some certain probability. And if I keep repeating, I can learn this probability function, so I can learn what kind of actions I can submit. But as we saw before on the electricity market, as we can see on this merit order curve example, in multi-agent setting, I'm not the only person on the market. There are also other actors on the market submitting their bids. They influence the market price, they change it, so my probability function, I can no longer learn it. And this is called that my environment is non-stationary, because it keeps changing. It's impossible to learn the probability function because other agents influence the market outcomes. So we need a way to solve this issue. How is it solved? It was done before my PhD started with a work which proposed a centralized critic. What the centralized critic does, it collects all observations, it collects all actions, and it also collects all rewards. And now we have one entity in the algorithm which has the complete information of the system. And since it has the complete information of the system, it can explain the changes in the market clearing. It can provide valid input on this probability function. So it can guide the agents to learn this probability function distribution. So the agents can learn on the market how to act, how to actually do something. So the centralized critic provides some feedback to the actors, and we can use this MA-DDPG algorithm. Everything perfect. When I started, I was happy when I saw it. I thought, okay, my PhD will go smooth. But then I did literature research further, and I found only 2 papers which were using this algorithm. And I got suspicious when in the first paper I saw that they had only 10 learning agents with 24 time steps. And that was it. This was a simulation, nothing more. And in the third paper, I found that they had only 3 learning agents and also very small number of steps, and also no renewables in both papers, and actions were limited basically between 0.9 of marginal cost to 1.5 of marginal cost, nothing more. So this is where I got suspicious. I tried implementing things myself, and I came to probably the cause why it was like this. And yeah, basically in this form, it's not usable to model any energy system. It is nice for some toy examples to play around, to write maybe a paper, but to model a proper electricity market, no, useless. So we had to solve the issue. And after some studying, I came to a conclusion, and this is one of the contributions of my work, is that I believe the authors were running into the dimensionality curse. As you can see, as the number of agents grows, it's the number of observations, all the actions, all the rewards, and so on grows also. And with some time, it gets impossible for the critic to actually learn something. In this, when you have hundreds of agents, it is just too much. The critic cannot handle it. So how I solved it? I decided to decouple. I draw the inspiration from actual energy market, where we have the idea that everyone basically sees the same. So if right now I open into a web page, I see the same demand forecast for tomorrow, and everyone in this room can see the same. I see the same price forecast. I see everything the same. So we can say that there is one bulk of information which is the same for every agent. And this information we can use, and I called it shared global observation. And instead of passing all observations, I pass from the environment the global observation, which is then the same for all agents, so I don't need to copy it multiple times. It is just one vector. And then what each agent gets on top is some local observation. Let's say just the marginal price or the marginal cost for a power plant. This is the price of your fuel for tomorrow, and that's it. And there's no need to propagate this to centralized critic, because like this global observation was sufficient for it, and it sees also the actions. And afterwards, the agents also get, the centralized critic still gets the actions, still gets the rewards, but just alone this action, instead of providing all the observations, splitting it into global and local observations, already breaks this dimensionality curse and allows for the algorithm to be more stable and for simulations with hundreds of agents to work. And this is what we showed in this paper. This is a simulation of 2021, and we were using 145 learning agents. Quite a bit of jump from the papers using 10 agents. And we can see that the prices, that the agents, without any external input, they didn't have any target function. They didn't have any like errors that your price should be like this. Just from the interaction among each others, that the resulting price closely resembles the historical price. And this was quite amazing at that point for me to see that this actually works. So this proves that it works. And there were also other studies showing that how we can also use it to extract some ability of the agents on strategic behavior and so on. So now with this knowledge and that the algorithm works, we can proceed and get to our case study showing the use case of the storage units. So in here we have 2 cases. One case is single storage unit, and it is a full simulation of German demand, feed in from renewables, forecast error. So the agent was getting forecasts, actual forecasts for tomorrow and so on. And the second use case is multiple storage units. So multiple energy storage units representing the complete pumped hydro fleet of Germany, I believe for year 2021. And again, all the same inputs. And here, multiple energy storage units, meaning all of them had their unique efficiencies, they had their own unique running costs, and so on. All of them were different, 25 units, and all of them were different in size, from very small ones of 20 megawatts to huge ones of 500 megawatts. And now what we can see, first plot, we see the financial performance. In blue, we see the reinforcement learning. Here in orange, we see rule-based approach. So similar rule like I showed at the beginning, if price is below this charge, if above this charge. Here we see optimization-based, based on naive forecasts. And we see like the same actions, but based on better forecasts. In this case, simulated forecast. So we ran the simulation once and gave the resulting prices on the agents. So basically they had perfect foresight, so to say. And so we can see in this best cases, the profits are comparable. And here last case is the unit commitment, so optimization, which I said is not profit oriented. So we can see it is here at the bottom. So in single agent case, everything looks fine. We could go with either reinforcement learning, we could go with rule-based strategy, we wouldn't be far off. But now what happens when we switch to 25 agents? We see directly that like here, the logic was the better the forecast, the higher the profits. Here, it becomes the curse. We can see that using rule-based and optimization-based, all of the agents are in loss. Because basically all of them see the same forecast. They try to use this price peaks from this forecast. They bid on the market and they change the merit order to strong. They force the price too low or they force the price too high. And thus, they end up with losses. What happens with reinforcement learning? It is still here at the top with profits. The profits of some units may be small, of some big, but every unit is making a profit. None of them is losing any money. If we look deeper to understand, okay, how exactly this works, what's happening is they avoid these collective losses. They were basically learning to play together on the market and not abstract each other. So we can see here total charging and discharging power using rule-based strategies. So we can see the peaks are very high and also very short. So as we would expect, everyone bidding at the same time, causing the system to stretch very strongly. Now over here, we see the same plot, but now using multi-agent deep reinforcement learning. We see the peaks are now lower. They're also wider. So the agents, they're spreading each other over the price trend. They're not bidding all at the same point. They're waiting. So if you look even deeper and analyze only two agents, what we can see here is the emerging niche strategies of this agent. So here, the same case using rule-based bidding strategy. And for example, if you look into this part, we can see they start charging all at the same time. And they all start discharging at exact same time. There are small differences due to technical differences in the units, but basically they're repeating the actions of each other. Now, if we use the reinforcement learning, we can see here at this time, for example, if you watch here, unit 21 decides to start charging earlier than the next unit. So unit 22 finds its own niche. It decides that I start charging when the price is above this epsilon and not another one. And so it starts charging here, and also it starts discharging earlier together. But over here, agent 21 is active again. Agent 22 is not doing anything. But their profits are comparable. Their sizes are comparable, but they're not bothering each other, so to say. So this is how reinforcement learning, and namely multi-agent reinforcement learning, is able to solve this issue on how to model behavior of multiple storage units, how they can act on the market, and basically avoid this collective losses. And this was also my suggestion to our colleagues from 50 Hertz. So my key contributions in my PhD thesis were, if I can summarize, is that First, I have developed a scalable approach on multi-agent deep reinforcement learning. First in its kind that it is truly scalable, can be applied to hundreds of agents, and can model actual true-to-life energy systems. Next, that this enables us automated modeling of individual bidding strategies. So before, if you wanted to achieve something like this, you had to sit and consider or like create individual forecasts for individual units or individual rules and so on. Now we can outsource basically this work to the machines. These individual strategies can be created for power plants, they can be created for storage units, anything you can think of. Basically, you can leave it running, it takes some time, but afterwards you have individual strategies which maximize the profit and they don't bother each other, so to say. Next, we can capture this emergent strategic behavior without explicit programming. So we don't have to say any rules. So for example, there was one case where a nuclear power plant, it was always bidding negative prices, basically to stay, to run. But then it learned that when the renewable, the forecasted renewable share was too big, it would bid positive prices to be shut down if this gap was longer than, I believe, 10 hours. But if it was shorter, it learned to bid negative to kind of stay online during these few hours and not pay the shutdown costs. So the agents themselves learned how to bid these negative prices. And so without explicitly modeling it, reinforcement learning could reproduce this behavior, what we also see on the markets with this negative pricing sometimes. Also, in my thesis, I've provided tools for validation and benchmarking, so to make sure that the agents actually work, that the results are plausible, and that the performance is on par with optimization, for example. And last but not least, that all this work was not put just into papers and uploaded on the internet. It was also put into a framework called Assume, where we worked together as a team and where these reinforcement learning concepts are available to users. They can go online, they can install the framework, they can run it, and they can get into this reinforcement learning by themselves with basically they don't have to repeat the whole work I did. They don't have to rebuild my papers. They don't have to go through this whole process. It's enough for them to install and they can start experimenting with it. So I made this with help of this project, this technology accessible to people and to researchers all over the place. And a lot of people are showing interest in this. But here the work doesn't stop. So there's still a lot of things that could be done with this reinforcement learning. So one thing is that mixed simulations, unfortunately in my work, I didn't manage to do this. When I was a PhD student, so next generation has to pick up, basically running mixed agent simulations. So running power plants and storage units together. This approach has its own challenges that both of them learn because both of them require different approaches to learning, but it's still doable. Next is that how would our zero marginal cost system look like? So instead of all the power plants, now we have wind and solar. The price is basically close to zero. What would be the emergent strategy over there? How the storages would act, how the renewables would bid? So basically, this question hasn't been answered yet. So there have been different works, but we don't know for sure. And it would be for sure very interesting to see this with reinforcement learning, basically to see where the market gets itself through this learning. And last, and which I believe is also quite interesting, I don't know if it's realistic or not, but to use adaptive agent to represent the market itself. For example, during the corona or like afterwards, we had this rule of price cap for renewables, nuclear of like 160. So what would happen if you would let the agent kind of control, for example, this price cap? What influences in long term would this have? And could the agent maybe figure out some better strategies which could help us with investment incentives for long-term like power plant expansion and so on and so forth. So this would be very interesting. This is it from my side. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward for your questions.